Hi everyone. Today we are going to be looking at another older rum from my collection that's part of the Romaniac series. For those who are unaware of what the Romaniacs is, it is it was a sort of like a club of like-minded individuals that was started in Paris in 2014 when a number of us got together. We were all there for the Paris Rum Festival that year. And Luca Gargano and Serge Valentin and myself and Daniel Biondi and Cyril Werglars and a bunch of others, we got together and we came up with this idea that we wanted to start talking about rums that are long out of production, but that still have a certain place in our memories, because we didn't want the memories of these things to fade. And I think that's a useful thing, because in some cases, the history of these rums is really quite a lot more interesting than the rum itself. A good example of that is this little sample that I have here. Now, this is the Demerara Distillers King of Diamonds. Now, the King of Diamonds is actually a local brand. I drank it a lot in my years when I was working up and down the country, in my misspent youth, you might say. And it's the local brand that eventually ended up becoming El Dorado. So 1992 is when the El Dorado line started to get seriously introduced, and that was with, of course, that seminal 15-year-old that I called a key rum of the world once. And gradually, the King of Diamonds started to fade out of consciousness. It was still available. You could still get it in the early 2000s, but by now it's been long discontinued. The thing was, because it was considered to be a local rum, it was the local branded thing. I don't think it was exported. You really didn't know very much about it. Remember, these were the days when you knew nothing about the stills. The whole business and marketing push about the stills wasn't all that interesting. And DDL was still kind of feeling their way around what they were going to do. So when you're talking about a local rum made for a cheap price, then you're within your rights to not actually be that curious about what's in it, as long as it can get you paralyzingly drunk in some bush camp in the middle of no place, which is where I used to be. Anyway, long story short, I don't know how old this is. You can see the picture here. And I also don't know what the components are, because DDL never used to tell you anything about them. It is a 40% rum. It's probably 3 to 5 years old. And there really isn't much to recommend it these days, because we've gotten used to so many better things in this day and age, whether it's from the independent bottlers or from the primary producers themselves, who really know what they're doing these days. And of course, DDL is one of the famed names of the rum producing world. That said, let's see what we've got here. At 40%, you'd be surprised how sharp this is. Spicy might be a better word for it. It has a number of the traits that you would expect from a rum from Demerara Distillers. Again, we don't know which stills made it, but for my money, it's a blend of probably several marks, French Saval still, perhaps a little bit of a Port Morant and more thrown in for good measure. We didn't know anything about that in those days, so we didn't really give a shit. But the bottom line is, it is a bit sharp. It's got a little bit of fruits, anise, gooseberries, a little bit of caramel, a little bit of toffee, and so on. It's nothing particularly special. It's definitely an entry-level rum, and of course, we did used to mix it back in the day. But much of what we know these days about the sort of profiles from the famed wooden stills isn't really here, and that is one of the drawbacks of the blend. Yes, it appeals to many people, but at the same time, some of the specificity of those stills is lost, not that we cared. Yeah, there's really not a whole lot going on here. When you taste it, you are going to get caramel, toffee, a little bit of nougat. There's a bit of sharp fruits in there, a little bit of anise, which suggests there's a little bit of Enmore, a little bit of Port Morant, perhaps even Versailles still left in there. Not really sure. Of course, we don't know the proportions, even if we did know which stills were part of it. It's not a bad rum in and of itself, but it's thin. It's 40%. It's really not going to wow your socks off. If you ever get this thing, because of course it was made in the 1980s, I'm fairly certain this is a 1980s rum, based purely on the label, because I don't remember this being a part of the one that they had. Yeah, you're just not getting a whole bunch, maybe a bit of extra coconut shavings. The finish is really fast too. This is something that kind of like just burns its way down, and it gives you a little bit of caramel, a little bit of toffee, a little bit of vanilla, blancmange, and so on, which suggests, of course, that yes, it has in point of fact been aged. I didn't check the dosage on it. I could, but you know, back in those days, do we really care? It's not like we're going to find this thing anymore. But I think it's got a little bit of sweet in there that suggests that there's been some dosage involved in the barrels. The King of Diamonds also has a 12-year-old floating around somewhere. Again, this is not something that is available any longer. Like I said, the line has long since been discontinued and folded into the El Dorado line. But I'm going to take a look at it one of these days just to tell you a little bit more about it. The question then is can you still get it? Yes, you can. You can find it on the auction sites. Is it worth your buy? Not for the taste. No, you just can't. All right. As far as I'm concerned, it's a perfectly serviceable rum of like a gold or an añejo or, some sub 5-year-old rum that you kind of like start your rum journey on. You buy this thing because it's a piece of heritage. It's a window into the sort of the past of the way rums used to be made back before the rum renaissance began at the turn of the century. And I think for that, it's kind of worth it, but don't pay too much for it. It's not that great a rum if all you're looking for is to taste it. As something that represents the past of DDL, I think it's absolutely worth it. And I have 2 more in my collection somewhere that I am going to look at one of these days. One of them is in point of fact the 1980s 12-year-old, and the other one is one made in 1982 by Guyana Distillers Limited, which was the short-lived precursor to DDL itself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This would not score more than, say, 72, 73 points. If you're interested in the score at all, I've told you why I think it's worth buying if you can get it at a reasonable price. But more than that, I really can't tell you. I hope that's enough for a quick, short review. And I hope you all have a really good day and take care of yourselves.